Hey everyone, welcome back to another Josh Wonders Why. It's been a while since we've been with you. I think the last time we met was June 3rd, and then you went on vacation or some other, I think it was
I
the
went on
conference.
Well, yeah, that's right. I went to annual conference, and then the next week I took a
The
vacation.
vacation, and the following week I took 2 weeks of vacation
Yeah.
off. So it's been a catch up, and it's been a while. So we're a little rusty at this.
Speak
So
for yourself, Josh.
I know, I will speak for myself. Fair enough. So, welcome. This is Josh Wonders Why. If you're new to this experience, it's supposed to be a weekly discussion on Mondays at 7 p.m. Eastern Time where Kelly and I talk about random topics that we feel we want to talk about. Sometimes they're what's in the news, sometimes they're questions people have asked us about the Bible or religious questions. Sometimes it's just an excuse for us to taste different junk food like Peeps or Kit Kats or whatnot. So, tonight, we figured since we've been gone for a month, let's hit it off with a pretty big topic. So tonight, I want to talk about the recent law that was passed in Louisiana about requiring all public schools, kindergarten through state-funded colleges, universities, to publish the Ten Commandments in their classrooms.
And I didn't realize until you said that it went through colleges too.
It did. It specified, yeah, state-funded
Interesting.
universities.
Interesting.
So I wanted to discuss that today, and if you have any questions or opinions or thoughts on the topic, feel free to put them in the comments. We'd love to hear from you and answer some of your questions or address any thoughts you have. So I guess with that, I'll give some additional background based off what I studied up from this law, and you can help supplement that, and we can start with some questions. So this law was passed, was it June 19th, so almost over a week and a half ago. And it basically, I said, it requires the 10 Commandments by 2025, the 10 Commandments to be displayed in every school classroom from kindergarten up to state-funded universities. And each of the posters should have a context statement that basically says that the foundational, I guess this is a prominent in public education for 3 centuries, and it's been a foundational document of our state and national government, is what they've said. And also the state governor has come out and said that if you want to respect the rule of law, you've got to start from the original lawgiver, which is Moses. So
Except it
maybe we
wasn't.
stop there. I'd like to get your
Except it
thoughts on this. Yes.
Yeah, one thing that I heard was in support of it was that it has historical significance.
Yeah.
And I think it has historical significance for the Jewish people because it is part of the Torah, which of course is included in our Bibles, in our Christian Bibles. But this law was given to the Hebrews in the desert when they were just beginning to figure out what it meant to be a nation. And it wasn't just 10 commandments. That's just the beginning.
Yeah.
In the end, I think there are 613 commandments in the Old Testament. So, why are we just putting 10? Why don't we put all 613? I don't
613.
know. Someone very wise that I live with has asked the question, if we're going to put commandments in public places, why not just use the 2 that Jesus gave us?
And that's a fair point. I feel like we as Christians may, what is the word, focus too much on the Old Testament, not enough on the New Testament, right? The Old Testament, like we discussed before, it was put together at the time for a nation just starting out, and it was also, even though we can argue if it was actually God-breathed or not, it was written by humans. And the New Testament, though, is basically Jesus knocking down the old and starting with some new beliefs.
Well, sort of.
Yeah.
Jesus said, I do not come to abolish the law, but to add to it.
Yeah.
And Jesus completed
Okay.
the original covenant. That's why he said, now it's the new covenant of my blood. And so it wasn't necessarily nullifying all of the commandments, but as we know, Jesus would say, "You have heard it said," and then he would, say one of the commandments, "But I say." So I think it's really important to read how Jesus handled it, and how he wasn't a slave to the law. And that's one thing that Paul really drove home in his letters. We are no longer a slave to the law. We are free. Mm-hmm. And so, when Jesus was asked, what's the most important commandment? He said, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and your neighbor as yourself.
Yeah.
So, and he said, and that sums up the law and the prophets.
Yeah.
So why don't we just put that one in public places? Why don't we, if we want to do that, which I think we have to go back to the idea that a lot of Christians have, that that we used to have religion in school, we used to have God in school, and now we don't. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a misleading statement, because there are plenty of Christians who go to school, who are staffing schools, and so I guarantee you there's prayer going on at school.
Yeah.
But it's just not teacher-led. And
yeah.
I think we have to be really careful when we say, well, we want God back in the classroom. Well, we want religion in the school, because you may not, Christians may not be the majority someday.
Yeah.
And so perhaps, the majority will be Muslim or some other faith, and that may be what gets put up on the bulletin board, and that would be fair.
Yeah.
So I think it goes back to that.
Do you think, and I didn't do research on this, and this may be totally false, but I mean, when you said, religion wasn't taught in the classrooms, I'm trying to think back to when I used to watch, because my mom was a big fan of Little House on the Prairie, mm-hmm. and those were all one-room schoolhouses mm-hmm. that taught everybody from, K through, whatever, 12th mm-hmm. grade where they had. And I feel like at the time, they would have taught religion as one of the classes in those one-room schoolhouses. And that was at the time because that was probably the majority of people that were here.
Yes.
That was the only thing they had.
Right.
Yeah.
And, but I think we forget that a lot of the Europeans who came to what is now the United States were escaping religious persecution.
Yeah.
And that was part of the founding of this country, was nobody's going to tell anybody what they can or can't believe or how they can practice their religion. Now, that didn't necessarily hold up even in the beginning, because there was religious persecution. But I think we have to rethink what it means to have God in school.
Yeah.
So, and as far as Moses being the original lawgiver, technically the first set of laws was the Code of Hammurabi.
Yes.
In 1750 BCE. The Ten Commandments come from the 7th century BCE.
Okay. You should write to the governor and tell him that he's wrong with this statement. You should put up the Code of Hammurabi instead, is what you're saying. So Mary Kate has a good comment about.
Oh my goodness, my phone's blowing up.
Well, going back to your thought, and I think then about putting Jesus's the two best commandments is, I guess Jesus' moral standards don't fit with the narrative playing out here, is they want to somehow use the Ten Commandments. Mm-hmm. And you had a good point too while we're preparing for this, is what are they going to post? Just the first line from each of the commandments, or the entire, second commandment's pretty extensive.
That's my question.
You may need 2 posters for that, not just one.
Yeah,
right?
And I just think there's some things in here that are worrisome if you're going to post this and there's no context.
Yeah.
Because the second commandment talks about not making for yourself an image. and not bowing down to them. And it says, "For I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, punishing the children for the sin of the parents to the third and fourth generation of those who hate me." I mean, that's pretty rough, but that's what it says. And, are you just going to put the first sentence, I guess? And then there's, "Remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy." Well, do Christians really do that?
Yeah.
I mean, some do, yes. But, when Jesus and his disciples on the Sabbath were walking through a field, and the disciples were pulling off heads of grain and munching those, and the Pharisees were like, "Oh, look, why do you let your disciples break the Sabbath?" And Jesus was like, "Seriously?"
Yeah.
And then he quoted some Old Testament stuff, and it was just like.
And what about teachers who are not of Christian or Jewish faith, that grew up as different faith or just with no faith at all? If the students come to them and ask them context of these Ten Commandments, does that mean they'll have to take some sort of class or training to sort of Christian studies in a way to be able to give them the guidance if students ask that, right?
Yeah, I don't know. But I also thought it was interesting that the Louisiana State Rep Lauren Ventrella, when she was asked, "What do you say to these parents who are not Christian?"
Oh, to the parents, and the students,
don't want their children to, be seeing Christian kind of indoctrination, I guess. And she said, "Well, don't look at it," which I found problematic.
Yeah.
Because I don't know. We could say that about a lot of things. You know, you don't like drag queens, but don't look at it.
Don't look at it. Yeah. Well, that's what I was doing some research, and so I was curious about how many countries have a national religion. And the Pew Research Institute did the study back in 2015, so it may have changed, but it said there are about 60 to 80 countries, I can't remember which one, that do have a national religion, whether they acknowledge it as the religion or it's just the more favored one, right? And there are 3 countries in Europe, I can't remember which ones, that do have an established national religion. And in those countries, right, they do teach religious studies in class, but it's an opt-in. You have to have the parents opt you into that class. It's not forced upon you. You have to take that class.
Yeah.
So I found that interesting that, but
let's look at the English history of the Protestant and the Catholic Church, and it depended on who was the monarch.
Yeah.
It was the monarch's preference of what the state religion was, and if you didn't comply, which had to have been so confusing. Can you imagine? Oh, we got a new king. Oh, so do we have to be Protestants or Catholics now? Oh, in another 10 years. Oh, what do we have to be now? And I mean, that's where the Inquisition came from.
Yeah.
Persecuting those who wouldn't convert to Catholicism. So it never goes well.
Yeah.
In history. It never goes well when you try to have governmental control on religion.
Yeah. Mary Kate asked a question. I don't know this. Has there been any Jewish response to new legislation? Have you? I mean, I haven't seen any Jewish response. Have you seen anything in your research?
Tony's response is funny. Oy vey.
Oy vey.
Yeah. That's a really good question.
Yeah, I don't know, Mary Kate. Yeah. So I do want to touch on something else that comments, and this is different than different than the Ten Commandments, but Mary Kate touched on it. There was I did read a news article in Oklahoma. So last week, the state superintendent Oklahoma is ordering that schools in the state begin to incorporate the Bible into the lessons, and this is for kids aged 11 to 18. And basically, the comment was, the Bible is an indispensable historic and cultural touchstone, and without basic knowledge of it, Oklahoma students are unable to properly contextualize the foundation of our nation. So I found that interesting too, that's coming on the heels of this 10 Commandments getting posted or getting put into every classroom. But then to the comment that I think Mary Kate and Tony have been putting on is, what if the Bible gets banned because of all the sex and violence in it? Then how are we going to be able to explain the 10 Commandments if we can't use the Bible to explain it, right? But
yeah. And I don't know how the Bible has not been banned. I mean, it fits the criteria of banned books.
What's a major historical document, like the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution,
I guess,
right?
but, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, all that, does not have, like, sex and violence in it. Like Scripture, like the Bible does. Just
maybe the first draft did, but they took that all out at the Constitutional Convention, right? So here's a question then, so I think it's Matthew 28. There's the Great Commission that says, go and baptize all nations. And I'm going to get the rest of it wrong, but how do we as Christians take that into context with, are we supposed to go out and, we're supposed to convert everybody, regardless of their religion. We're supposed to, you're Muslim, no, we need to convert you to Christianity, right? Or you're, I don't know, how do we...
That's certainly how people understood it during the Crusades.
Yeah, so how do we, with people that still have that thought now, how do we, combat that or debate that?
I would say, look at how Jesus went about his ministry. He didn't force anybody to do anything. He said, here it is. This is what I'm about. This is what, will give you peace, will give you satisfaction in life, but you have to, but it's up to you. Jesus didn't go around threatening people and, forcing them into anything. So I think we look at that, and that's our example.
That's a good point. So rather than forcing on people, we by example and say, let me tell you about the...
I don't think Jesus said, go make disciples of all nations and baptize them whether they want to or not. I don't think that's what he meant.
Okay. Interesting. I like Tony's saying we should post the Ten Commandments with Charlton Heston holding it.
Okay.
So then, I guess what's
interesting comment.
So then Mary Kate says, I'm also hoping that it will be stopped before it happens. Lawsuits and laws already in place, like Stone versus Graham, although I don't know about this one. So I don't know. It is interesting because we were talking about I guess it's unclear. I was reading some articles how they will enforce it, right? So if you think about it, I think there's like 1,300 public school classrooms, and then you got to take about all the rooms in state-funded universities. How do you go around to enforce and make sure, each classroom has the correct poster, right? And then also what I found funny is the state's enforcing it, but they can't fund it. You need to get it through their donations or some other means, right? So,
which I'm sure they'll have no trouble getting funding from donors.
Yes.
From people all over the country are probably already donating. But who's going to pay for the legal fees? Because as he said, I can't wait to get sued. And of course they did. And who's going to pay for that?
Yeah.
The taxpayers.
Yeah, that's a fair point. So they're not going to pay for the cheaper posters. They're going to pay for the more expensive woods.
And it just bothers me that's what you're going to focus on. Of all the things that you could focus on in children's education, that's what you're going to make a priority, not like, free lunches or breakfast or, better library, better teacher pay, that's what you're going to focus on instead of all that.
Yeah.
Which makes me sad.
Yeah. Focusing on trying to drive that and trying to, I wonder how much of it is they're making that law because they believe in it versus they want to get the favor of the popular Christian vote for the next term election or something, right?
It's a good question.
I don't know.
It's interesting timing.
Yeah, I should have preface this discussion saying we're not going to talk about whether or not this law is on the Constitution, or we're going to talk about strictly the religious aspect of it. So, Mary Kate's also saying none of this makes sense, and yet things keep happening in seemingly small ways to chip away at the current ways. So then, you mentioned Project 2025. That's probably something for another Josh Wonders Why. Maybe we need to get some more time to prepare for it.
Yeah, if you don't know what Project 2025 is, you probably should look that up. Google it.
Yeah. and I guess we'll end with this. I was curious because all this talk about, well, the United States was founded on religion, on Christianity and God, and I was curious about, there are two things that there's the slogan or the term "In God We Trust" that we see on our money, and I was curious, has that always been on there? And I did some research, and I think you did too, and I found that when money was first, I guess when the national currency was first created in the late 1700s, it didn't say "In God We Trust." It just said, liberty or freedom or something else. I think it was added around the time of the Civil War, basically by a Union preacher to try to drive maybe hope for the Union soldiers that see this and think God's on our side, when we're fighting the Civil War. And then the Pledge of Allegiance I was always curious about because it also states under God, right? And it's interesting, Pledge of Allegiance was written in 1892, and there was no, it didn't say under God at all.
And it wasn't meant to be the country's pledge.
Yeah.
It was written for a specific event.
Yeah.
But I guess it caught on.
But it caught on, and I guess it wasn't, the phrase under God wasn't added until the 1950s when Dwight D. Eisenhower wanted to add it as sort of to combat the communist threat at the time. So some of these things that maybe people have considered have always been a part of the, to support their narrative, were not really there at the beginning of it, right?
Well, yeah, and I think as a Christian, I try to think, what is the perspective, not politically, but as a Christian, and what just stands out to me in all of this meshing church and state is an underlying fear. Just like in the 50s, the fear was communism. And so these things were added, under God, added to the Pledge of Allegiance. And God We Trust became law under Eisenhower or something. And because they feared communism. And, the thing is, adding those words, how does that fight communism?
If you don't say it, you're a communist. If you refuse to say the Pledge of Allegiance.
Well, I guess that's
right?
true.
I don't know.
I guess that's the litmus test.
I'm guessing that's what it is.
But, and today it's the same thing. We have, communism and fascism and all socialist, all these things are being thrown around, generating fear. And the conspiracy theories, there's so many.
Yeah.
And, the end times and New World Order that Pat Robertson wrote a book about, deep state, all these conspiracy theories that are generated to produce fear. But as a Christian, 2 Timothy, Paul tells Timothy, God did not give us a spirit of timidity. We're not supposed to have a spirit of fear. That's not what God wants for us. And so if Christians are feeling afraid of, somehow losing something, I think we need to check ourselves, and we need to say, is this genuinely something that as a Christian I need to be afraid of? Or, do I stick to what Jesus told us, love God, love neighbor? If I just kind of stick to that, am I going to be all right? I think so, because at the end of the day, God is still in charge.
Yeah.
And you can't legislate morality. You can legislate rules, and those rules can help keep communities safe and productive, and you don't have people just running around doing whatever they want. But you can't legislate morality.
Yeah.
So no matter how many, under God and God we trust, 10 commandments posted, no matter how much of that we do, that will not produce the results that people are saying it will.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. Yeah, and I guess with that too, I was reading, there is the this is about a different thing. I won't get into what the news article was, but the Alabama Supreme Court Chief Justice has said recently with an interview that basically saying, hey, God created the government, and the fact that we have let it go into possession of others, it's heartbreaking for those of us who understand, and we know it's for Him, being the capital H. So I feel like there's, besides fear, it's also maybe there is a belief that, maybe if it's going off the Great Commission or something else, we as Christians need to take control and, lead this world.
But go back and read the book of Acts and see how the church operated after Jesus left.
Yeah.
How did the church operate? How did go look at historical accounts, not necessarily in the Bible, but in history, historical accounts of what the Christians did, how they lived. They didn't go around forcing people to believe what they believed or, forcibly baptizing anyone. They loved their neighbors. They took care of each other and they took care of their neighbors.
Yeah.
And that's what furthered the gospel. That's what made people say, I want what they have.
Yeah. And I think Susan has a good point too. She says, just support the kids going to Pine Creek UMC camp. They will hear all about how the main and only commandment is love. So there you go, love. I think that's the quote, was it from the end of Frozen? It's love. Love.
That's right.
Cures a broken heart, a frozen heart, right?
Yes.
Love.
Love thaws.
Thaws a broken heart. That's what it is.
Frozen heart.
A frozen heart. Yeah.
Some things are worth melting for.
So there you go. What's been a good discussion?
Yeah.
I think we'll end there because it's a good discussion. Thanks everybody for watching tonight and for adding your comments. Thanks for helping us break this down.
And I will say that I am always open for discussion.
Yes.
So, send me a message and we can discuss further.
Yeah.
You don't have to agree with me.
Yeah. These
are just my perceptions.
And if you have any other questions or if you have any other opinions, and you can always post anonymously in our group, and we will take everything seriously to comment on and discuss. So let's see. So looking forward to the rest of this week. I guess starting this morning you had a coffee with Kelly. That's what it's called, right? Okay. Coffee with Kelly. So you didn't catch that, you can go back and watch that on our Facebook group. And then we'll be back for another Digging Deep this Thursday, which is also July 4th. But we have no other plans at 7 o'clock, so we'll be here live to do a special July 4th Digging Deep, right? Maybe we'll sing God Bless America or something, right?
Maybe not. Maybe not. No, I'm going to be talking about being rooted in God's love.
Okay.
That's what I'm going to talk about.
Maybe we'll have some fireworks, too. You'll have to show up to watch.
Can we get some sparklers? We'll set off the sprinklers.
Maybe we can do it outside or something.
Oh, that's true. That's true. We could do that.
So we'll be back for Digging Deep on Thursday. So appreciate you all watching us. And if you have any other topics you'd like to discuss, any additional news that has gone in that we haven't touched on that maybe you're concerned with, like the Ten Commandments, or we talked about the Bible in schools, if there's anything else that you've read or heard that you're confused about or want to have more discussion on, just put a post in our Facebook group, send me a message, send Kelly a message, and we'd love to talk about it in a future Josh Wonders Why.
Yeah.
So until then, we'll see you later.
See ya.